So here we are in our fourth segment. We're going to leave Whitehorse. Whitehorse is a really fun town when the weather's nice. We actually found a couple outdoor restaurants, met some really nice people from Canada, and had a great time for the nights we were there. It's also got the world's largest weather vane outside the airport. It's a DC-3. There's the terminal at Whitehorse. The tower's controllers there are just super friendly. And the headwaters of the Yukon start right there in Whitehorse, and that's what they look like. It's really, really pretty. So here we are now. We're going to depart runway 14, and as luck would have it, we were able to use this runway and then make a left turn because we're going to go back northwest bound. So you'll see some neat pictures here. There's a picture of the dam right there at the headwaters of the Yukon again, just outside Whitehorse, and then we're making a turn, and then you see a really good close-up of the city there, kind of in the left side of the screen, and the Yukon River right along the right-hand side. So now we're headed about 320 on the heading, and we're going to make a turn up here just a little bit. We actually don't follow the Yukon River. It goes more to the north, and we're going to go a little bit more northwest and even west here for a little bit. So you'll see a little airport coming up here. You can kind of see it right there in the clearing. That's called the Cousins Airport. It's just a little northwest of Whitehorse. It's a gravel strip, and that's where we make our turn now. The Yukon River kind of heads off to the north, and we're going to turn westbound. So remember that for those of you that are pilots, this is an international trip from Whitehorse to Northway, so you're going to have to file a flight plan, international flight plan. Tower will open it for you here out of Whitehorse, and then you'll need to file EAPIS, and you want to call U.S. Customs, and we're going to talk about what happens on that phone call here, but you want to, get permission to enter the country, and then let them know your time of arrival. So here's a little airport. We're just going to make some turns. You can see here how we're following now the Alaskan Highway out of Whitehorse. Remember, we picked it up in Watson Lake. You're going to continue to go through some little valleys there. By the way, there was a little airport or airplane showing up there on the ADSB. It was a Piper Cub. We had actually talked to the couple. They got out ahead of us at Whitehorse, and they were headed the same way. Us being in the RV-10, we managed to pass them, and right about the time we had fueled and departed Northway, they were getting into Tok, rather, not Northway. So here we are following the Alaskan Highway. We stayed down low to help everybody see what this trip looks like. The Cub, they went up to about 8,500 feet, and on a day like today, you can see it's really pretty. You can actually fly a more direct route, which takes you over some of the hills on the way to Northway and Tok. But we decided to stay along the river and the highway here. You can see the highway there off to the right and the little river. There's a good view off to the left side. This is a really enjoyable part of the trip between Whitehorse and Northway. It's a big wide valley with mountains on either side, and you can look up those valleys and see just lots of glaciers that are feeding these rivers. By the way, it looks like the Yukon, but it's not. As I mentioned, there's so many different rivers with different names along this one. Here's another little airport you can see popping up. Just a little cleared runway there. Again, right along the highway. And there's the river off to the left. You're going to see as we get a little further north-northwest here, more snow-covered mountains. The climate is getting cooler. That thing that you're looking at right down the center to the left screen there looks like an underground pipeline. By the way, you will see more signs of civilization along this route. There's quite a few turnoffs along the Alaskan Highway for motorhomes. There's some RV parks, and then there's, as you can see here, even farming along this route. Again, we were looking for some moose and swans along this same route. Lots of swans in these little ponds, and as we get closer to Northway, you'll see lots more little ponds, and there were lots of pairs of white swans in these ponds. There you can start to see some snow on top of the mountains there. The clouds were really high for this part of the journey. You can see how the stream there really starts to meander. We tried to stay right by the river with the highway in view just in case. So we had an engine problem, we could get to the highway. But we didn't want to stay directly over top of it so that you could actually see what the scenery looks like. You can see it's a lot of marshland there on both sides of the highway. So if you do have a problem, you kind of want to get back to the highway. Again, off the right there, you can see what looks like a buried pipeline. As we get closer to the Alaskan border, we're going to actually try and point out the border to you. Unlike in the lower 48 where you can't see borders along the states, up here, since it's an international border between Canada and Alaska, it actually is cleared. I think it might only be about 50 feet wide or so. It's a little tough to pick out from the air. You go by it so fast, almost perpendicular, but if you know where to look for it, there's one little airport, Beavers, I think it is, and right before you get to the Alaskan border, and right after Beavers, you watch for it, and we've been able to find that border on almost every flight we've taken. Again, sorry about the stills and it not being a movie. The camera mount was still broken, was not able to fix that until we got to Anchorage. And after that, you'll see some movies. So in a little bit here, you'll be seeing a fairly decent sized airport come up called Haines Junction. And at Haines Junction, we make a turn more in the northwest. And then the other side of Haines Junction is a saddle that we actually end up having to go over. And that is the high point of this leg. So sometimes you can get to that saddle and you'll have to turn around and go to Whitehorse. It's not that high, but it's just the way the moisture and everything lays in these valleys between the mountains. Here you can see on the sectional, we're approaching Haines Junction. That's what the airport looks like. You can see we're going to make a turn there because there's hills straight ahead. As I mentioned, you can see the snow there on the mountains. Those aren't clouds, that is snow. It's pretty lush green here too. We did not see any evidence of fires. So that is the highway you're looking at here. We fly a little bit left side and right side just to take a look at the scenery. So here in a little bit, you're going to see a really pretty lake come up called Kluan Lake. And at the other end of Kluane Lake is another little airport called Burwash. Now, for you pilots, you got to pay attention to these airports because this one, as well as Haines Junction, etc., they have mandatory reporting frequencies. And here you are, you're the only aircraft flying around, you don't see anybody else, and you talk on the radio, and next thing you know, a very pleasant person comes back and gives you the local weather information. So it is really nice. And it's a real pretty lake here. So for the pilots, I mentioned a story about U.S. Customs here. Usually the port of entry on this route is Northway. It's the first airport inside the line, just across the border. And it turns out the building was either in disrepair or burned or something, so Customs doesn't come out there anymore. You still call Northway Customs, but they answer it in Anchorage, and you let them know what your expected arrival time is. And then they usually give you a choice as to whether you want to go to Fairbanks for Customs or Anchorage. In this case, the fires, we saw some on the way here, and the smoke, and then we heard that it was not worth trying to get to Fairbanks, so we proceeded on to Anchorage, and we'll detail that one to you in the next video. There is a good picture of an RV park. I mentioned that there are turnouts, etc., for RVs along this section of the highway. So here we are getting up towards the north end of Kluane Lake, and the Burwash Airport is there. And again, mandatory frequency, you can look at it on the sectional there. And here's a picture of what it looks like. And then again, you can see on the next one with the terrain mode, we're going to still follow the Alaskan Highway there and stay below the peaks. So from this point, we're actually just about 25 minutes now flight time in an RV-10 to the border. The airport you want to watch for there is called Beaver Creek. It's the last Canadian airport prior to the Alaskan border, and it puts you about just about 16 miles from the Alaskan border if you were to go in a straight line. But on the way to Northway, it ends up being a little longer because you're going to go somewhat at an angle there. So it takes a little more time. That 17 or 16 miles I mentioned turns into about 25 to 30 miles. So in a little bit here, we're coming up on kind of a neat looking river. It's called the White River. Looks like a bunch of squiggly lines on the sectional, and you'll see why here in a second. It's just a lot of streams just intertwined with each other. There's a good view of it. You can see what it looks like on the sectional here. And there's a good picture of it. So now once you've passed that standout landmark there, it's kind of hard to miss. The next thing you're going to be looking for is a little airport and town called Beaver Creek. And we'll show you a picture of it here as we get a little closer. Beaver Creek is not one with a mandatory reporting frequency, but sometimes somebody will answer. There's a lot of nothingness along this route of the flight, but you're only seeing the view out the front, unfortunately. The view out either side is really pretty. There's mountain ranges on both sides. I may not have mentioned it earlier, but for those of you who are thinking about landing on the Alaskan Highway, just to put it in your logbook, the stretch between Whitehorse and Northway is a good area to try that on, and it's where I did mine. There are long straight stretches and good visibility, so you can see if there are cars coming in either direction. And like most of the rest of the Alaskan Highway that we've seen, it's not real busy. But, I would recommend that you at least climb a little bit high, take a good look in either direction, and then set up a normal approach and make your takeoff and landing. It is the world's longest runway. So here we are. You can see it gets quite a bit flat now as we get towards the northwest corner of the Yukon Territory here and approaching Alaska. As I mentioned, we're coming up on Beaver Creek. It's only a couple miles away from here. You can actually see the little town right there now in the center, going right over top of it. and then you'll get a good view of the airport right there. It's right off the highway. There's what it looks like on your sectional. We'll have another close-up picture for you here. It's a gravel strip. And you can see in the next slide, the terrain's not quite so high up here. We're at the same altitude and you're not seeing as much red peaks. It's much flatter here. So now we're about maybe 20 miles from the border. We're only 16 as the crow flies, so we're pretty close, but we're kind of going up more at a northwest than a due west heading. So it's taking us a little longer to get to the border because we want to follow the highway here. All right, we're getting real close to the border now, so if you want to see it, you got to pay attention. And it's right, we're going to show you a picture on the sectional. You can see it right there as we cross. And on the next slide, you want to look, it's the little line pointed right at the lake in the center of the screen. If you blink, you'll miss it. Again, it looks like just a little clearing, but it's fun to actually see the border. So now, we're only about 15 miles to Northway. That is, as I mentioned, the first airport. But in this case, we're just going to overfly Northway because we have permission to land at Tok for fuel. And that's when we call customs in Anchorage and let them know of our expected arrival time into Anchorage. Now, the other thing I do here crossing the border, but it's not necessary, is I did call ATC. I think it was Anchorage Center, and ask if we needed a squawk code for the transponder since we were crossing the border. And they replied, no, there's no radar coverage up this way anyway. So that's also why we didn't get a squawk when we left Whitehorse earlier, as we had in other flights inside Canada. When we left from Tower Fields, they gave us a squawk, and we stayed on that squawk for the entire flight. So the other thing you want to remember to do when you land at Tok is to call Canadian Flight Service and close out your flight plan. Since you're no longer in Canada and there's nobody there to close it for you, you got to remember to do that. So 2 phone calls when you land at Tok, one to close out your flight plan and another one to let customs in Anchorage know when you might get there. So you can see it just remains more flat and nondescript. A lot of marshland here. Once you get a little north of basically Haines Junction and Burwash, it's just kind of marshy like this. So here we are approaching Northway. You can see it coming right down the right kind of center of the screen. It's a pretty good sized airport, and we've landed there a couple times before. There's no fuel or any services there, though. Another good picture of it. So from here we continue to head up the road to Tok Junction, where we all joke about being one Tok over the line. So there are a couple of little airports, gravel strips or grass strips between Northway and Tok. You kind of got to watch for them. They're just about alongside the highway there. The first one coming up is called Tetlin. There's a little lake off to the southwest side of it called Tetlin Lake. So Tok now is only about 17 miles from Tetlin, so you want to start paying attention, listen for other aircraft. Sometimes Tok can get a little busy. It is the only field up this way with fuel. So you'll see lots of Bush airplanes traveling both from Fairbanks and or Anchorage and headed back the way we came from. It can get kind of busy, but super friendly people here. And the little town, if you want to call it that, is right off of the runway. And so you can walk and get something to eat if you want. There you can start to see Tok coming up. It's got an east-west runway, you can see there. That's the highway. And right off to your left there, coming back, is Tok Junction. So the airport's kind of on the south side of the Alaskan Highway. Right there's a good view of it, east-west. You can see the highway off to the right side. And you can see the airport looks like the busiest place in town. And here we are landing to the east, runway 9. As you can see, and I hope you enjoyed it, it's a wonderful leg from Whitehorse to Tok Junction. It's very relaxing. Hi everyone, good Wednesday morning. We had a great ride this morning up from Whitehorse. Sorry, we meant to actually do a video and we forgot. It was just kind of a bunch of rigmarole trying to work customs, flight service, etc. this morning. But a beautiful flight up. It's the nicest flight we've had from Whitehorse up to the Alaskan border. And you guess where we're at? We're at Tok Junction. So we are literally one Tok over the line. Pretty exciting. So now we're getting ready. Customs is not available at Northway anymore, but they allowed us to land here at Tok for fuel. And we're going to head down to Anchorage to clear customs and then hopefully into Homer today. Lots of smoke in the area now, fires. It's amazing up here. The fires get started. They're huge fires. We reported one to Whitehorse Flight Service just a little bit southeast of Beaver Creek. We could see it off to the east there. It must have been a 50-mile wide fire. And we're being told here at Tok we don't want to go to Fairbanks. There's huge fires between here and there. So that was originally one of our destinations. So we're going to head south to Homer, and we're hearing it should be really nice. So we're going to follow the Glen Highway. Thanks for watching.